She was left humiliated in a restaurant she couldn't afford. One empty chair, one untouched glass of wine, and a dozen eyes watching her fall apart. And then he appeared, the man in the corner booths who ruled the room without saying a word. Alessandro Russo, power wrapped in silk and danger disguised as charm. When he said, "Join me," it wasn't an invitation, it was fate. That single choice pulled Emma Chen from heartbreak into a world where loyalty is currency and love is the most dangerous deal of all. From betrayal to power, from fear to desire, this is not just a love story. It's the making of a queen beside a king who once ruled alone. Before we begin, if you believe that sometimes danger can lead to destiny, make sure to subscribe. It's free and helps us share more stories from Desire Tales. The screen glows softly against the dim light of Castello. I stared at my phone for the 5th time in 10 minutes, its black glass reflecting only my anxious face. No new messages, no missed calls, just silence. Around me, the restaurant hummed with conversation, the quiet clinking of silver on fine china, and the muted laughter of people who belonged here. A waiter glided past, his expression polite but curious, noticing my still empty place setting. Would Madam care for another glass of water while waiting? His voice was carefully neutral, but the pity in his eyes stung. "Yes, please," I managed, though my throat was dry despite 2 glasses already gone. "And I'm sure he'll be here any minute." The waiter nodded, stepping away with that subtle look, half sympathy, half gossip. I caught the hostess glance over, whispering. I'd become a spectacle. The woman stood up on a blind date at Castello, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. My roommate, Eliza, had sworn this place was totally worth it, that her cousin's friend Jason was loaded and gorgeous. Now, 45 minutes later, with no Jason in sight, and only $27.46 in my bank account, I was beginning to panic. The ambient light suddenly felt too harsh, exposing the makeup I'd worked so hard on, and the navy dress I'd splurged 2 weeks of lunches to buy. I'd been so excited, my first date in over a year, since the disaster with Michael. "A fresh start," Eliza had said, "a chance to meet someone who could take care of you for a change." I shifted, trying to appear calm as the minutes stretched longer, painfully aware of the glances from nearby diners. Castello was a temple to wealth and image, half-moon booths of deep burgundy velvet, each arranged for intimacy and spectacle at once. It wasn't just a restaurant. It was a statement. And then I saw him. Not Jason. The man in the corner booth, alone. Dark hair, immaculately styled, a face carved from stone and shadow. He sat with the quiet authority of someone who never had to raise his voice to be obeyed. His table was set for 4, yet his presence filled it alone. A glass of amber liquid caught the light as he lifted it, his movements slow, deliberate, commanding. He didn't belong to the crowd. He commanded the gravity of the room itself. 2 men approached him, deferential, heads bowed. They whispered, leaning close, but he didn't move, only nodded occasionally, the barest flicker of acknowledgement. When they left, they stepped backward, like courtiers leaving a king. That's when my phone buzzed so sudden I nearly spilled my water. My heart leapt. Finally. Jason. But no, it was Eliza. Eliza was, any sign of him yet? Me. Nothing. 45 men late. Pretty sure I've been stood up. 3 dots blinked. Then her reply. That jackass. I'm going to kill my cousin. Are you okay? Can you just leave? I glanced toward the small leather folder at my table. The bill for my 1 glass of white wine. $18. My almost entire remaining budget. Me. Already ordered a drink. Can't dine and dash. Eliza. Shit, Emma. I'd transfer you money, but I'm flat broke till tomorrow. The truth crashed down, stranded at one of the city's most expensive restaurants. No date, no cash, and a growing knot of humiliation in my throat. Tears threatened, blurring the chandelier lights into trembling starbursts. I took a deep breath. I'd explained to the waiter, offer to wash dishes if I had to. Excuse me. The voice came from beside me, deep, smooth, velvet over steel. I looked up into a wall of dark fabric, an impeccably tailored jacket, and then higher, into eyes so dark they were nearly black. He said, I couldn't help but notice your situation. The trace of an accent I couldn't place coloring his words. Your date isn't coming, is he? Embarrassment flooded me anew. Great, even strangers could see it. It appears not, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Just a misunderstanding, I'm sure. His lips curved slightly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. A man who keeps a woman like you waiting isn't worth your time. Before I could answer, he made a small gesture. A waiter appeared instantly, not mine, but an older man with a silver mustache. Marco, the lady will be joining me for dinner. Please have her things moved to my table. Of course, Mr. Russo, he replied with a slight bow. My brain finally caught up. Wait, what? Unless you'd prefer to continue waiting alone, he asked, his gaze so intense I could hardly breathe. I hesitated, glancing around. Diners were staring now. My phone buzzed again. Eliza, maybe try to sneak out. I don't even know you, I whispered. He extended a hand, strong, elegant, with a platinum ring gleaming on his right index finger. Alessandro Russo. And you are? Emma, I said automatically, placing my hand in his. Emma Chen. His fingers closed over mine, warm, steady. Well, Emma Chen, he said, pronouncing my name with unsettling precision. I'm having dinner alone tonight, which is rare for me. You've been abandoned. It seems the universe is suggesting we should eat together. His tone was polite, but beneath the civility lay command. Refusing felt impossible. I can't afford this place, I blurted. That almost smile returned. I'm inviting you to be my guest now. Come, before your wine gets any warmer. Marco appeared again, retrieving my glass and the unopened bill. Alessandro took the folder, tucking it into his jacket without even glancing at it. Another man had appeared behind him, broad-shouldered, stone-faced, an earpiece glinting faintly. Security. I hesitated only a moment longer, then gathered my purse, rose, and followed him. Every head turned as we crossed the dining room, curious, envious, whispering. His back of jacket was immaculate, each stride purposeful, as if the world rearranged itself to make way for him. He led me to his corner booth, larger, more secluded, yet positioned to see everything. Another man nearby rose to join the guard.
Not friends, not colleagues, security detail. "Who are you?" I asked as he gestured for me to sit. He slid in across from me, adjusting his cuffs with calm precision. "I told you my name." "That's not what I meant." He studied me for a long moment, then turned slightly toward Marco. "Bring the 1906 Brunello and a fresh menu for Miss Chen." Only after Marco hurried off did he lean back, eyes still locked on mine. "I'm a businessman with diverse interests: import, export, real estate, finance." The vagueness should have warned me. So should the bodyguards. But somehow, I found myself leaning closer. "And do you often rescue stranded women from embarrassing dates?" He said, "Only when they intrigue me," voice smooth as the wine he was about to pour. And that is how it began. The night I was stood up and found by the king in the corner.
And which interpretation did you choose? The one that most favored my client, I admitted, then flushed. I mean, within ethical boundaries, of course. His lips curved slightly. Of course. Loyalty is important in your line of work. Trust is everything, I agreed. Clients need to know I'll protect their interests. He nodded slowly. And do they reward that loyalty appropriately? I thought of my cramped apartment, my overdue bills, the promotion that never came. Not always. Then they're fools, he said flatly. Loyalty should be valued above all else. There was something in his tone that went deeper than business, a shadow of pain or conviction carved long ago. The second course arrived, truffle risotto, creamy and fragrant. We ate in near silence, the hum of the restaurant fading as if the world existed only within the glow of that booth. He spoke again, softer this time. "You ask a lot of questions," I said finally, setting down my fork. "But I still know almost nothing about you. What would you like to know? Why do you have bodyguards? And don't say it's standard for businessmen. It isn't." He considered me, then placed his knife and fork down with deliberate precision. "In my position, there are people who might wish to negotiate from a position of leverage. My security team ensures those negotiations happen only on my terms. Are you in danger? Everyone with power is in danger, Eva. The greater the power, the greater the danger." He lifted his glass again. "Does that frighten you?" It should have. It didn't. "I'm not sure," I said honestly. "I think it depends on what kind of power you have and how you use it." A faint glimmer crossed his eyes, something between approval and warning. "A very diplomatic answer. I'm a translator, not a diplomat. The line between the two is thinner than most realize." Then commotion near the restaurant entrance. Two men in suits, urgent voices, pointing towards us. Alessandra's gaze flicked there, his expression hardening. A subtle gesture, and his guards moved instantly, silent, precise, intercepting the men before they reached our table. "Is everything okay?" I whispered. "A minor business disagreement," he said, calm but firm. "Nothing to concern yourself with." The two were escorted out swiftly, their protests swallowed by the quiet authority of Russo's world. "Your business disagreements require physical removal? Some people don't understand the concept of appropriate timing." He turned toward the hovering waiter. "Marco, the check, please." My pulse spiked. "Are we leaving?" "Yes," he said, rising smoothly. "I apologize for the interruption." Marco appeared with the bill. Alessandro slipped several large notes inside without even looking. "I have another establishment nearby where we can continue our evening in peace if you wish to join me." Every warning bell in my mind screamed. But so did curiosity. I should probably just go home, I murmured. He regarded me, unreadable. Of course, I'll have my driver take you. Relief and disappointment warred in my chest. Thank you for dinner. It was memorable. He smiled faintly. The evening doesn't have to end yet, Emma. Come with me for one more drink. Then, if you still wish to leave, my driver will take you anywhere you want to go. I should have refused. I didn't. His hand extended, steady, patient, waiting, and I took it. The corner booth wrapped us in a hush that felt almost sacred. Beneath the low light, the white tablecloth gleamed like a stage. Marco returned with the bottle Alessandro had ordered, a 96 Brunello, presented as if it were a relic. Alessandro nodded once, approving, and the waiter poured him a small taste. He raised his glass, dark eyes catching the light. To unexpected meetings, he said. I hesitated, then lifted mine. To expensive rescues. Something like amusement flickered in his eyes before he took a sip. I followed, the flavor blooming across my tongue, rich, deep, absurdly luxurious. He set the glass down, fingers steady. Now, Alessandro said, his tone deceptively soft. Tell me who this man was, the one foolish enough to stand you up? I explained about Eliza's cousin's friend, the blind date setup, my dwindling patience. He listened without interrupting, expression unreadable, only the faint tightening at the corner of his mouth. When I finished, he made a small sound, a sound halfway between a hum and a dismissal. A boy playing at being a man. You have had its fortunate escape. Marco returned again, this time with menus, but Alessandro waved them away. We'll have the chef's selection. Start with the scallops and the truffle risotto. Then, looking at me, any allergies or aversions I should know about? I shook my head quickly. No allergies, but good. He interrupted smoothly. Marco, make sure Chef Paolo knows the lady appreciates his artistry. Marco bowed and disappeared. I found myself staring at Alessandro, trying to decode him. He was clearly wealthy, powerful, accustomed to command. The deference from everyone around us wasn't just respect, it was fear disguised as politeness. You're staring, Emma, he said without looking up. Sorry, I murmured. It's just... Is this how you normally dine? With bodyguards and staff treating you like royalty? Now he looked at me slowly, deliberately. Yes, he said, simply. Does that make you uncomfortable? It should have. Everything about this should have screamed danger, and yet, sitting across from him, I felt something unexpected. Not fear, freedom. He didn't apologize for his power. He wore it like silk, effortlessly. I'm just trying to understand why. Someone like you would bother with someone like me. His eyes darkened, the air between us thickening. Someone like you, he repeated, his voice lower now. And what kind of person do you think you are, Emma-chan? I hesitated. The answer came smaller than I intended. Ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of woman who gets stood up on blind dates and can't afford the wine she already ordered. His gaze didn't waver. Normality is vastly overrated, and often merely a disguise. Before I could respond, the first course arrived. Scallops with gold leaf, shimmering like treasure. "Eat," Alessandro said, not touching his plate. "I want to see if you enjoy it." There was something almost predatory in the way he said it, watching me as I lifted my fork. The scallop melted on my tongue, buttery and perfect. A small, involuntary sound escaped me. For the first time, I saw him smile, truly smile. "Good," he murmured. "There's nothing more disappointing than sharing excellent food with someone who doesn't appreciate it." As we ate, he asked about my work. I told him I was a translator, Mandarin and English. "Ah," he said with genuine interest. "You have an excellent ear for language." My mother was Chinese, my father American. I grew up speaking both. It surprised me how easily the words came. Something in his focus drew them out, like confession under soft interrogation. He leaned back, swirling his wine. "Languages reveal how people think, the patterns, the structures. You must see this in your work. That's why machine translation still fails. It can't capture context. Meaning shifts with culture. Last month, I worked on a contract where one Mandarin character had 3 interpretations. Each changed the entire clause. The city night opened like a secret as we stepped outside. A black car waited at the curb, sleek, tinted, humming softly. The driver moved to open the door for me, but Alessandro gestured for him to step back. "I'll take it from here," he said quietly. He held the door himself, waiting until I slid into the back seat. The interior smelled faintly of leather and something darker, spice and smoke. The moment he closed the door behind him, the city disappeared into tinted silence. "You said another place?" I asked, my voice too small for the hush that filled the car. "My penthouse. It's 5 minutes away. Safer, quieter." I looked toward the driver, then at him. "You mean more private?" "That too." The car glided through the streets. I should have refused, should have told him to stop. But instead, I found myself staring at his reflection in the window. The calm confidence, the restrained power. When the car finally stopped, we arrived at a glass tower overlooking the harbor. The guard at the entrance didn't ask for ID, he only nodded once, stepping aside. The elevator rose in silence, the city lights shrinking below us until they looked like scattered embers. He didn't speak, neither did I. But the tension, electric, magnetic, filled every inch of the space between us. When the doors slid open, the air itself seemed different. The penthouse was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline, marble floors that caught and fractured the light. A single grand piano stood near the balcony doors, its lid closed. "This is where you live?" I asked softly. "For now," he said, removing his jacket and hanging it neatly over the back of a chair. "I travel often." "For business?" He smiled faintly. "Always for business." He moved toward a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Cognac?" "Sure," I said, taking the glass. The burn of it was instant, rich, complex, demanding attention. "You still haven't told me what you actually do," I said finally. "I thought I had." "Imports, exports, finance. I gave a small, humorless laugh. That's the most evasive list I've ever heard. He regarded me for a moment. Then slowly, deliberately, he set his glass down. You're right. I owe you the truth, at least in part. He crossed to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city glittered behind him, like a reflection of the man himself, dazzling, untouchable, dangerous. My family has been in business for generations. When my father died, I inherited not just the wealth, but the responsibilities. I manage certain affairs others can't handle. Some of those affairs fall in the gray between legal and necessary. He turned back to me. Does that concern you? I swallowed hard. Should it? He studied me quietly. You're not afraid easily. I noticed that. I'm not naive either, I said. You have bodyguards. People defer to you. That doesn't come from import and export alone. You're perceptive. He came closer now, the distance between us shrinking until the scent of him, clean, warm, with a trace of danger, filled my lungs. So what are you, exactly? I asked softly. A man who does what he must, and who rewards loyalty above all things. That sounds like something out of a movie, I whispered. Perhaps, he said, stepping closer still. But everything I've told you tonight is true. I felt the weight of his gaze. There was no arrogance there, only certainty. And what about me? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Why bring me here? Because you interest me, he said simply. You didn't panic, you didn't beg, you didn't play the victim. You handled humiliation with grace, and that's rare. He paused. I wanted to see what you'd do when given a choice. A choice? To stay or to leave? The world narrowed to that moment, the skyline glittering behind him, the quiet hum of the city below. You're giving me an out? I asked. Yes. If you want to go, I'll have my driver take you home. No strings. I studied him. Every instinct I had screamed that this man was dangerous, but something deeper whispered that he was telling the truth, and that, somehow, was even more dangerous. And if I stay? His answer was barely a breath. Then you'll learn what it means to be truly seen. Silence stretched, the kind of silence that holds its own gravity. He waited, patient, still. Neither did I. Then, slowly, I crossed the space between us. You're impossible, I murmured. So they tell me, he said, a ghost of a smile touching his mouth. And when he kissed me, it wasn't gentle. It was deliberate, consuming. Every inch of distance, every layer of caution burned away. Time blurred. The skyline became a sea of trembling lights behind glass. Later, when the world was quiet again, I sat at the edge of the bed, staring out at the city that had betrayed me hours ago and delivered me here instead. He stood nearby, half in shadow, buttoning his shirt. You can still leave, Emma, he said softly. I looked over my shoulder, meeting his gaze. You don't seem like the kind of man who's used to hearing no. Maybe that's why yours would matter. I didn't answer. I only reached for my dress, slipping it back on, the air still thick with something neither of us dared to name. At the door, he paused. Last chance to run, he said quietly. I turned to face him. I think I'll stay just a little longer.
Morning came in shades of silver and quiet. The skyline stretched endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, drenched in pale light. For a long moment, I didn't move. The world felt still, fragile like the moment before a confession. I could hear him before I saw him. the soft sound of movement, the faint clink of porcelain. When I turned, Alessandro Russo was already awake, shirt unbuttoned, sleeves rolled, barefoot on the marble floor, setting a tray of breakfast on the low table near the window. "You're up early," I said, my voice rough with sleep. "I don't sleep much," he replied. "Old habit." Steam curled from the espresso cups, the scent of roasted beans mingled with citrus and sea air drifting from the balcony. "You didn't have to make breakfast," I said. "I didn't," he corrected, a faint smile touching his lips. "My chef did. I just delivered it." There was no arrogance in the way he said it, only precision, the tone of a man who ensured every detail was exactly as it should be. I sat down, hesitating. A slice of sunlight fell across the table, touching the plate of fruit and the small crystal bowl of honey. He poured the coffee for me himself. "You take sugar?" "Two," I said, watching as he stirred without asking again. For a moment, we were just two people sharing coffee and quiet. Then he said, almost casually, "You said last night you're a translator, Mandarin and English, correct?" "That's right." "You work freelance?" "Mostly. Agencies, sometimes directly for clients." He nodded slowly, studying me over the rim of his cup. "How reliable is your income?" I laughed softly. "You mean, do I make enough to survive?" "Barely." He set the cup down, eyes still fixed on me. "I could use someone with your skills. Temporarily." That caught me off guard. "You're offering me a job?" "A position," he said carefully. "Translating and assisting with some international contracts. The pay would be generous." "How generous?" "Triple your current average monthly income," he said simply. "For a 3-month trial." I stared at him. "That's more than generous." "And you'd be under my personal protection during that time. I don't offer that lightly." His words sank in slowly, each one a deliberate weight. Protection, employment, power. "Why me?" I asked, quietly. "Because you're competent, and because you didn't run last night." I hesitated. "What exactly would I be translating?" "Business contracts, negotiations, conversations where accuracy matters more than legality." "That sounds dangerous." "Not for you," he said. "I don't mix my personal and operational affairs." The phrasing made my stomach tighten. Operational affairs. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. "You don't have to decide now. Think about it. I'll have Marco send you a draft agreement to review." He stood, buttoning his cuffs, composure absolute. "You can stay here for breakfast. The driver will take you home when you're ready." I looked up at him. "You're serious about this job?" "I don't make jokes about business." "And what if I say no?" He smiled faintly. "Then you'll have had an excellent meal and I'll have enjoyed your company. That's all."
He stepped closer, lowering his voice. But if you say yes, things will change. For better or for worse. That, he said, depends entirely on how well you listen. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city outside shimmered, alive and waiting. Finally, I rose from the table, smoothing my dress. "I'll think about it," I said, softly. "Good," he replied. "My offer doesn't expire, but opportunities do." He walked me to the door. The elevator opened with a quiet chime. "Emma, the world I live in doesn't give second chances. Choose carefully." Our eyes met for a breath longer than they should have. Then the doors closed, leaving me with my reflection and the faint scent of his cologne. Dark, deliberate, unforgettable. As the elevator descended, I realized the strangest thing. Despite everything I didn't know about Alessandro Russo, part of me already trusted him.
The offer haunted me for days. It lingered in every quiet moment between translations, between bills, between the steady tick of the clock in my father's small apartment. He had good days and bad ones. Lately, the bad were winning. That morning, I found him sitting on the kitchen floor, holding a photograph upside down. "Dad," I whispered, kneeling beside him, "what are you doing down here?" He blinked up at me, lost. "Your mother was just here. She made tea." My heart tightened. Mom had been gone 8 years. "You miss her today, huh?" He nodded, still looking past me. His hands trembled. The photo slipped from his grasp. Later, at the clinic, the doctor's voice was calm but merciless. "Your father's cognitive decline is accelerating. He needs full-time supervision, possibly placement in a memory care facility." I stared at the estimate on the paper. It was more than I made in 6 months. That night, sitting in the half-light of my apartment, I stared at the business card he'd given me, the one with no title, just a name embossed in black foil. Alessandro Russo. I told myself I'd only call to ask about the contract, not because I needed him, not because I trusted him, because I had no other choice. The line barely rang once. "Emma," he said, as if he'd been waiting. "I was wondering when you'd call." "You said your offer didn't expire." "It doesn't," he replied, "but your tone tells me something's changed." "My father," I said, quietly. "He's getting worse. I can't afford the care he needs." A pause. "Come to dinner tomorrow, 7 o'clock. We'll discuss terms." Costello again. The same velvet booths, the same golden light. But this time, the hostess didn't hesitate. She led me straight to him. He stood when I approached, the perfect gentleman cloaked in danger. "You look tired," he said. "I've had a long week." He gestured for me to sit. "Then let's make it shorter. You need stability. I need someone I can trust. The rest is negotiation." I took a breath. "If I work for you, there are conditions." "Of course." "My father gets the best care available. I choose the facility, and you cover everything without using it as leverage against me." He didn't flinch. "Agreed." "I keep my apartment. I come and go as I please." "Within reason," he said. "Safety matters. And if I ever want to leave, I can. No strings, no threats." This time his eyes hardened.
Do you think I'm a man who keeps prisoners? I think you're a man used to getting what he wants, I said softly. I just need to know where I stand. A long silence stretched between us. Then, if you choose to walk away, you'll walk away untouched. That's my word. He leaned closer, voice low. But if you stay, you'll learn what loyalty truly means. I met his gaze without blinking. And what does that mean exactly? It means I protect my own, always. Dinner arrived, something delicate, fragrant, untouched between us. You're serious about this, I said, finally. I don't make casual offers. And what do you get out of it? A translator who understands nuance, and a woman who knows her worth. There was no smirk, no arrogance, just certainty. You're not the first person to underestimate me, I said. And you won't be the first to surprise me, he replied. His tone shifted, quiet but absolute. You'll start Monday. Marco will handle your contracts. Your father's arrangements will be finalized by morning. I froze. You already? I made inquiries, he said. There's a facility north of the river. Excellent staff, discreet, fully equipped. They have a private suite available tomorrow. You checked before I even said yes? I don't like waiting for predictable outcomes. He slid a folded document across the table. Read it tonight, sign if you agree. Nothing happens without your consent. I stared at the paper, then at him. You plan everything, don't you? It's how I survive, he said simply. Then softer. And now how you will. I looked down at the contract. Clean, professional, impossible. You realize this sounds like a deal with the devil, I murmured. He leaned back, eyes glinting. Then let's hope you like fire. The next morning, my father moved into the best memory care facility in the city. He didn't remember who paid for it, but I did. And when I looked out over the city from the balcony that night, wind curling around my hair, I realized something quietly terrifying. I had just said yes to Alessandro Russo, to his world, to the price of love.
Monday came quietly, but my world had already changed. The contract was signed. My father was settled in a private suite by the river, peaceful, cared for, safe. And I was no longer just a translator. The first morning began at the Russo Enterprises Tower downtown. The elevator opened to glass walls, city views, and silence thick enough to hear your own pulse. Marco met me in the lobby, impeccable suit, expression unreadable. "Mr. Russo is expecting you," he said. He led me to an office larger than my entire apartment. And there he was, Alessandro Russo, behind a desk of dark walnut, light cutting through the blinds in silver lines across his shirt. He stood as I entered. "You're punctual," he said. "You don't strike me as someone who tolerates lateness," I replied. "You're right." He gestured for me to sit across from him. "Antonio will bring you the files. You'll work with him closely. Contracts, correspondence, translation. He's my consigliere." That word, consigliere, hung in the air. I knew what it meant. Not assistant, not advisor. The man who kept order in a kingdom built in shadow. Moments later, Antonio Ricci walked in. Late 40s, sharp eyes, voice like gravel smoothed by education. "So, this is the famous translator," he said. "Emma Chen," I introduced myself, extending a hand. He shook it briefly, assessing. Mr. Russo doesn't usually bring outsiders in. You must have impressed him. Or he's testing me, I said. Same thing, Antonio replied, setting a stack of documents on the desk. Alessandro didn't look up from his screen. Show her the Hong Kong portfolio first and the Shanghai revisions. Antonio nodded. Come with me, Miss Chen. The rest of the day passed in a blur of legal jargon and coded language. Half the contracts were in English, half in Mandarin, all threaded with clauses meant to be interpreted carefully but not questioned aloud. By noon, I'd found a translation error in one of the trade agreements that could have cost millions. When I pointed it out, Antonio paused mid-sentence. Are you certain? Positive, I said, showing him the text. This phrase, priority shipment, was mistranslated. In Mandarin, it implies exclusive control. The contract gives your client leverage they didn't intend. He glanced toward Alessandro's office, then back at me. Fix it, quietly. By afternoon, the correction was done. Russo signed the final version without comment, but when our eyes met across the room, I saw it, the flicker of acknowledgement, respect. Evenings blurred into night shifts. Some days I worked in his office, translating documents beside the hum of city lights. Other nights I was back at the penthouse, cross-referencing files while he took calls in Italian, Russian, Arabic. He didn't hide what he was, not from me. He never said Mafia, but the truth hung in every silence. Still, he kept his word. He never placed me in danger, never forced me to cross the moral line I drew that night at Castello. Once a week, I visited my father. He never remembered the name of the facility, but he smiled each time I walked in, eyes bright for just a few fleeting minutes. The nurses called it the good room, the one reserved for important clients. Everything gleamed, clean linens, sunlight, soft music, and every time I signed the visitor log, I saw the same words at the bottom of the payment ledger. Paid in full, Russo Holdings. 2 months in, Antonio stopped watching me like a hawk. One evening, after a long negotiation with Hong Kong investors, he handed me a folder and said, "You have good eyes and a quick mind. You'll fit in here." That almost sounds like approval, I said. Don't get used to it, he replied. But his mouth curved faintly. Even the security team had softened. They greeted me by name, offered coffee, escorted me to cars with quiet professionalism. Somewhere along the line, I'd stopped being the outsider. Late one night, I caught Alessandro watching me as I typed, the glow of the monitor reflecting off his cufflinks. "You've adapted quickly," he said. "You make it sound like survival training." In some ways, it is. He leaned against the edge of the desk, eyes tracing my face, not possessively, but with a kind of quiet recognition. "I told you this would change things," he said softly. "I didn't lie." I met his gaze. "You didn't have to." Weeks became routine, contracts, meetings, brief moments of silence between storms. But underneath it all, something new had formed. Trust. He'd once called loyalty the currency of his world. Now, I understood. Loyalty wasn't about obedience. It was about understanding the danger and choosing to stay anyway. And somehow, in the middle of all that danger, I'd found a strange kind of family. Antonio's guarded respect,
Marco's quiet efficiency, and Alessandro's steady presence. Unpredictable, yet constant. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. That night, as I left the tower, Antonio called after me. "Chen." "Yes?" "Russo doesn't keep people around for long, unless they prove themselves." "And what if I already have?" He studied me for a beat, then gave the smallest nod. "Then welcome to the family."
6 months. That was how long it took for everything I thought I knew about my life to dissolve into something unrecognizable, something powerful, beautiful, and deeply dangerous. I had become part of Alessandro Russo's world, his organization, his home, and somehow, without meaning to, his heart. My days were filled with contracts and meetings, my nights with whispered Italian and the rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my cheek. I had seen enough of his empire to understand its reach and its shadows. There were conversations that ended when I entered the room, bruised knuckles he never explained, men who vanished quietly after crossing him. Yet through it all, he never lied to me. And in his quiet moments, the ones no one else ever saw, he let the mask slip. "Every position of leadership comes with burdens," he said one night as we sat in his study, the city glittering beyond the glass. "People depend on me, not just my associates, but their families, businesses under my protection, communities who rely on the stability I provide." "Protection?" I repeated, my voice low. "Is that what you call it?" His eyes darkened, unreadable. "You disapprove." "I don't know enough to approve or disapprove, but I know protection can mean different things in your line of work. In the absence of effective, legitimate authority, someone will always fill the vacuum. I prefer it be someone with principles." "And you have principles?" "I do," he answered, his voice like iron wrapped in silk. "I don't deal in human trafficking. I don't sell to children. I keep violence away from civilians. I protect those loyal to me as if they were my own blood." He paused. "And I punish betrayal without mercy." The last words landed like a warning, cold, final, absolute. A shiver traced my spine. This was the world I had chosen. And though I told myself I could leave, I wasn't sure I ever would. Despite the darkness, our connection deepened. He saw me not just as an asset, but as someone real. When I asked once why he had chosen me, he said simply, "Because you're real, Emma. In a world of masks and facades, you stand naked in your truth." He was wrong, of course. I wore my own mask, the one that hid how completely he had undone me. The first time he took me back to Castello, it was exactly a year since the night we met. The same corner booth, the same candlelight flickering across his face. But everything else had changed. I wore red, a dress he'd chosen, paired with a ruby pendant that gleamed against my skin. "1 year," he said, raising his glass, "a significant milestone." "Did you expect we'd make it this far?" I asked. "I had hopes, though you've exceeded every expectation." After dinner, instead of heading home, he took my hand. "Come," he said softly, "I have something to show you." We drove to the waterfront where the city lights shimmered over black water. A private dock waited, and moored there a sleek yacht, its polished decks glinting under the stars. "What's this?" I asked as he guided me aboard. "A change of scenery. A weekend away."
On the deck, a small table was set with champagne on ice and a single red box. "Open it," he said. Inside was no ring. Instead, a heavy antique key rested on black velvet. "What does it open?" He met my gaze, something raw flickering beneath his calm exterior. "My home in Lake Como. It's been in my family for generations. I want it to be our sanctuary, away from business, away from obligations. Just us." I stared at the key, understanding what it meant. Not just access, trust. "I'm not asking for forever, not yet. But I am asking for more than what we have now. I want you in my life completely, Emma. Not just in my bed or my business, but in my future." The weight of the moment pressed into me like gravity. A year ago, I'd been a woman abandoned on a blind date. Now I stood on a yacht under the stars, being offered a place in a king's world. I closed my fingers around the key. "Yes," I whispered. "I want that too." He pulled me to him, his kiss fierce and possessive, yet tender in a way that still caught me off guard. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "You've changed me, Emma Chen. I didn't expect that." I smiled, tracing the line of his jaw. "We have changed each other." As the yacht pulled away from the dock, the city lights receding into the horizon, I felt the truth settle deep in my bones. The path I had chosen had not been easy or safe, but it had led me here, to a life filled with danger, passion, power, and something dangerously close to love. Whatever came next, I knew one thing. We would face it together, stronger for the fire that had forged us. And in that quiet space between danger and devotion, between fear and desire, we had become something neither of us expected. A family born from fire.
The seasons turned. Winter melted into spring, and the world outside their glass tower softened, though inside, power never slept. For the first time in years, peace didn't feel like weakness. It felt like control. Emma had learned to move through Rousseau's world with quiet authority. Her name carried weight, her voice respect. She was no longer the woman abandoned in a restaurant. She was Emma Chen, the woman who translated not just his contracts, but the language of his empire. Late nights no longer ended in fear. They ended with strategy, laughter, silence, and sometimes with him standing behind her, tracing his fingers lightly along her wrist as she worked. "You still translate every word like it matters," he murmured once. "It does," she said. "Every word is a promise, every clause a knife." He smiled at that, the kind of smile that only existed for her. When the expansion into Singapore closed successfully, Antonio said what everyone already knew. "She's the reason it went clean." Russo didn't respond, but later that night, he placed a small velvet box on her desk. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a silver key. "What does this open?" she asked, smiling faintly. "Our new offices," he said. "I want you to have your own wing. You've earned your place, not beside me, Emma, but with me." Her heart caught on the word, with. That was all she had ever wanted. Equality, not salvation. By summer, the empire had evolved. Contracts were cleaner, alliances steadier. Even Antonio, once skeptical, had said quietly over whiskey, "He's different now. You changed him." Emma had only smiled. "No, he let himself change." One evening, as twilight fell over the harbor, Russo found her standing at the balcony of their penthouse, hair lifted by the wind, eyes lost somewhere between past and possibility. "Do you ever miss your old life?" he asked. "Sometimes," she admitted.
but not enough to go back. He stepped closer, his hand resting at the small of her back. You could, if you wanted. You still can. And leave all this? She said softly. The chaos, the empire, you? He gave a small, wry smile. You make it sound like I'm part of the chaos. You are the chaos, she whispered, turning to face him. But you're also the calm that follows it. Silence lingered, heavy, intimate. Then, in the half-light, he took her hand and placed something cool against her palm. A ring, simple, platinum, engraved on the inside. She turned it and read the words etched in Italian. Nel pericolo abbiamo trovato il destino. In danger, we found destiny. Her breath caught. You don't have to answer now, he said softly. I just wanted you to know what this means to me. She looked up at him, the man who once terrified the city, now waiting for her answer. You already know, she said. The night that followed was quiet. No deals, no calls. Just the hum of the city below, and two people who had finally stopped running. Months later, the world would call them many things. The power couple, the queen, and the team of an invisible empire. But behind closed doors, they were simply two souls who would learn to build something lasting in a world made of ashes. It wasn't just love they'd created, it was legacy. And when people whispered about Alessandro Russo, they didn't just speak of power anymore. They spoke of the woman who stood beside him, the one who had turned the king into something more than a myth. Every empire, he once told her, needs a heart strong enough to keep it alive. And she had been that heart, not his possession, not his salvation, but his equal. As dawn goes over Lake Como, sunlight spilling over the water like gold, Emma stood on the terrace with the man who had once been her danger, now her destiny. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Because sometimes silence is the language of forever. And this was theirs. My favorite part was when Emma looked him in the eye and said, "You're the chaos, but also the calm after it." It proved she wasn't just surviving his world, she was mastering it. What was your favorite moment of justice or power in her story? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to know what spoke to your heart. Don't miss more stories where love and danger walk hand in hand. Subscribe to Desire Tales and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next tale of passion, power, and fate rewritten by love.